Hey everybody, it is late at night and I am Norman. I love me some Bauhaus watches. And I love me the Stowa Antea. And I love me some roasts. So tonight I'm going to attempt to roast one of the nicest watches I have in my collection. So let us begin. So before I get out the lighter fluid and the matches, let's address Stowa. Stowa. You know what's really irritating? News anchors who decide to bust out with accents every time they pronounce a person's name who's from another country. I don't know what they think. You don't sound any smarter. You know, they're like, we have a guest today. His name is Roberto. Nobody cares, bro. We don't care that you sat at home for a week practicing rolling your R's. You don't sound smarter or enlightened or whatever you think. It's ridiculous. Do they do this in other countries? I mean, like, across the pond, are they like, hello, we've got an American here. His name is Robert. What? So, Stowa, you can toss off for making me feel like one of these lame news anchors. Every time I say your name, it's like I'm imitating the accent of the Germans. No. So looking at this watch, my first impressions of it, it looks like a 5-year-old drew this watch. Alright, Johnny and Jane, draw a watch. What does it look like? It's round? Yes. It has numbers on it. Oh, and the hands are just lines drawn with blue crayon. And Stowa's like, sweet, let's do this design. But it looks like a 5-year-old drew it. That's fine, we'll call it Bauhaus. And the interesting thing is, this isn't the only watch that looks like this. There's another brand that makes amazing Bauhaus watches, and they make a watch that looks almost identical to this, and they charge twice as much for it. In fact, they have the same exact font on both of these watches. And of course, I'm talking about the Nomos Tangent. Now, the major difference is the Nomos only has half of the numbers. So every other hour is a batten marker. And if you look at that dial closely, you'll realize that the batten markers look an awful lot like the number 1 on that dial. So it's almost like they just put a bunch of 1s around the dial. That is something I cannot unsee. Now, I don't know which one came first, it doesn't really matter, but I guess it would go something along these lines. So Nomos sees the Antea and says, that watch looks like it was drawn by a 5-year-old. Let's do it. Although, do we need all the numbers? I mean, people don't need all the numbers, right? Batten markers are Bauhausy. Why don't we put both on this watch? And I get it. It's like seeing a shirt and you're like, I love this shirt. I'm going to make a total copy of this shirt, but with half the buttons. It's an aesthetic thing. You don't need all those buttons. Ridiculous. And of course, if it was the other way around, Stowa comes along and says, hey, half the numbers are missing. How are people supposed to know what hours those are? Let's put numbers on all of them. And those lugs. Ew. They look like hinges on an industrial freezer. It's like the ugliest part of an already ugly appliance. And Stowa's like, let's put those in a place where you'll see them from every single angle that you look at this watch from. Nobody's escaping these lugs. And it's cool they're drilled. But I hate to be the bearer of bad news. If you drill a hole in the head of a lug, it doesn't kill it. And you'll notice that none of the hands on the Antea have a counterweight. I mean, they kind of look like swords without handles. At least the Tangent did a counterweight on its sub-second style. So Nomos at least threw us a bone. Well, a little piece of bone that'll probably get stuck in our throat and kill us if we chew on it and try and swallow it, but they gave us a piece of bone there. Oh, and Stowa, guess what? On my wall, I have a wall clock that looks almost exactly like your watch, and I bought it from Target. So yes, Target is out there making wall clocks that look like your watch. How does that feel? Oh yes, and look at this case shape. You know, Seiko has the Seiko tuna. This totally, literally, is a tuna can-shaped case. The Stowa tuna. And look at that dial. That dial is absolutely brilliant. Too bad you put it on your tin can watch. Now you notice that there's a few design decisions that were made in making this watch that are kind of strange in light of the fact that it's a Bauhaus watch. So let's discuss Bauhaus for a moment. Prior to the Bauhaus school, if you wanted to be an architect or a designer of things, you would go to a design school and you would study architecture and whatnot. You would learn how to make technical drawings, blueprints, and you'd learn how to design stuff. If you wanted to be an artist, you would go to art school and you would study artsy-fartsy stuff, sculptors and painters, and you would practice your doodles. When Bauhaus came along, they merged the two. So it's kind of like high school. You have wood shop, where at my school at least, that was where all the sports guys and the hillbillies were. You know, bigger people, popular people, who like to do stuff with their hands, who like to build stuff. So the Bauhaus school took that and merged it with the art class, where all the scrawny, pasty goths hid out all day long. And I don't know that from personal experience at all. It wasn't me. So we have our Bauhaus class, and we're designing the Antea in this class. So all of the woodshop guys are like, you know what, we're going to eschew all the fancy, artsy-fartsy stuff of the past. We're going to make something minimal, functional, and the design itself will be the art. And then the goth kids are like, but what about art? Could we at least have blued hands? Fine, you can have blued hands. And can we have a display case back? Yes, you can have a display case back. When people are wearing it, you won't really see it, so it's fine. And can we have a case that's so polished that if you look at it wrong, it'll get scratches? Fine, but that's all you get. Beat it, nerd. I'm pretty sure that that's how those decisions came about. But I could be wrong. I don't know. When we look at the case back on this watch, we see that it's held in place by a bunch of screws. Wait, look at those screws for a moment. It's almost like this watch is Bauhaus's equivalent of steampunk. Whoa, that kind of explains some things. The crazy looking lugs, the pressure gauge shaped watch case, and of course the screws on the back, yeah. Now that I realize that, I'm gonna have to throw this thing away. But I suppose I ought to move on from steampunk or I might irritate the couple old guys who watch this channel. And by old guys, I mean not the 20-somethings who are frantically Googling steampunk to see what kind of dumb crap I'm talking about. Oh yes, steampunk, single-handedly keeping the goggle industry afloat. Steampunk is about as cool as a grown man pretending that he's living in the 1950s or 60s. Now the dial is brilliant on this watch, but so is the movement. The movement inside this watch is the Peugeot 7001, and now I understand the screws on the case back. If this was a pressure fit case back, that movement would pop that back off, escape, and jump off a cliff. This watch is only 36mm in case size, and that's a good thing, because Bauhaus watches that have case shapes like this wear much larger than they are on paper. So, the good news is this watch only wears like a 42mm, and it's a little bit too small to be used as a full-sized one, but a watch this size is perfect for using as a coaster for your shot glasses. Because of course you don't want your shots ruining your tables, right? Oh yes, Stowa's wrist plate. And on the topic of Bauhaus, why even bother anymore? The Bauhaus watch has already been made. The Xeno Quartz. How do you get any more Bauhaus than that? Boom, Bauhaus achieved. This thing looks like a cartoon watch. And this watch is a hand winder, so you can't just put it on your wrist and try to forget that it's there. Every single day you have to take it off and lovingly wind the thing up. Which means you gotta look at it while you're doing it. Oh man, I just figured this out. Hold on. Bauhaus watches. I figured out Bauhaus watches. Bauhaus watches are so that people who don't want to admit they like dress watches can buy a dress watch. What? That's totally it. That's the secret. I figured it out. Lav mic drop. Oh, crap. Testing? Testing? This thing wasn't cheap. Dang it.